So, do you think it is a hard exercise for oneself to accept as a greedy being?
Yes. Tell me who's not greedy? Are you not greedy for your own personal well-being?
No, I am not
Are you are
asking about myself. I am asking on a
नहीं
general
नहीं you
sense.
cannot make any general statement, or you cannot make
Is it
any.
hard to accept?
Yes.
I am
And
asking
that
that.
it is extremely difficult to accept that. And I say this not by mere observation, but I say this by personal experience. I, on specific occasions, find myself being led by my own traps of mind. So I don't think somebody who's already busy in some activity or charting out a course of life for himself will be able to distinguish on such a plane, because personally it's an exercise in self discretion. You create distinctions on the basis of your own self. I distinguish myself from the others specifically on these, let's say, point A, point B, and point C. Now tell me how many people do this exercise? How many people are fit to do this exercise? How many people are introvert? How many people try to look inwards? How many people actually take out the time and mull over their existence?
So, I want you to throw some light on the theory of dependent origination, Pratit Samutpat, the causation theory, cause and effect. What do you have to say on that? Do you think it is true?
Yes, it is true. I subscribe to to that theory, and my reasons for subscribing to that theory is that besides being a pure work of academic ideation, the theory is in itself an exposition into Indian positions and Indian logical systems, explaining as to how cause and effect actually play a very important role in our existence, and that they are completely free from any sense of discontinuation, which actually means that everything that is happening right now is a result of your own choice. In a way, it separates me from this idea of fatalism, because I cannot sit on the fence hoping that the best will come to me, or the best will happen to me merely because I am some enlightened soul, or I am merely an instrument of somebody's figment of imagination.
Then,
In both the cases, I abhor this idea, and since I abhor this idea, what automatically takes my attention is this theory of Pratitya Samutpad, the cause and effect of existence. And let me remind you, this is, since we are talking about the issues related to existentialism, the questions in general are being put forth by you in that direction. So this question has also been answered in that direction only, in the context of that conversation that we are having, this discourse that we are having. But the theory itself is a is applicable to all the existence right across this plane, and can be used to answer even the pure material questions and purely metaphysical questions as well.
so what is your meaning of life?
My meaning of life.
Because it is not same for everybody.
No, no,
My
it
idea
can
could be
it can
different.
it can be vastly different,
So,
but
what is
but
your idea?
but at the
How do
outset
you see life?
let me tell you, there is a huge overlap of everybody's idea, though each one of us hold different ideas related to their lives or life in general. My idea of life is to to understand the systems and institutions that I have been a part of, to know them fully, to know the space that I have inherited in its fullness, to know at least a considerable percentage of literature that I have come across fully. For that, I'll have to read uh, till the end of my life. And there is this idea that keeps on recurring in my head, that I'll keep on buying books, I'll keep on spending money on books and doing different things such as exploring my countryside, exploring different topographies across this country, and if chances arise, I'll even go outside the country. But I have decided that beyond a point I won't buy any books, because the point of buying a book is to read it completely. And I've realized that the textbook that I read, the poems that I read during my
School days.
school days, uh, tend to give new meanings when I read them now. As we were discussing about हवा हूँ हवा में बसंती हवा हूँ. So the profundity of experience that we gather as we move along space and time also enriches our experience related to the literature and to the experiences of time and space also. So in a way we are moving in a flux, and in this movement also we keep on learning. So the best way to understand life, to discover a piece of profundity out of it, is to go back simultaneously and to move ahead at the same time. So beyond the point I won't be buying any books. I'll read every single book that I have in my house, and that I'll buy till that time, and then if I'm able to do that, I'll move ahead and I'll buy new ones. Because the one thing that I have decided is that I'll not die without using all the facilities that have been provided to me, or that I have created for myself. But see, there is a catch. I don't know when I'll be dead. I might be dead right after this interview, right the next moment. So in a way, everything is a flux. You don't know. You just tend to live in extension. So let's
So,
see. For me, life is about living it
so
in
I'll
a flux.
be I'll be asking one question related to your PhD thesis.
Mm-hmm.
So the most basic question that I can ask is the meaning of the word litrolegal. How will you define that word in a very simple manner to lay people or common people?
Litero-legal is a compound word consisting of two different disciplines. Litero stands for literature, and legal stands for the law aspect of my thesis. So when both of these words come together in the light of my PhD thesis, it actually accrues to the understanding of my PhD dissertation topic uh, from the point of views of from the interdisciplinary point of view of both these disciplines. So I'm basically a dystopian research scholar. I'm doing research on the various kinds of dystopia, and see, since dystopia is also a very well read, a widely discussed issue, because dystopia for me is everywhere. This whole existence in itself is a dystopia.
Mm-hmm.
Politics is dystopia. The whole idea of absurdism, the whole idea of existentialism tend to explain the meaning of this dystopia. The whole work of Camus was nothing but to take us out of this dystopia only. Other philosophies also deal in that direction. So my thesis, according to um, the limitations of my synopsis, is exclusively related to the interdisciplinary aspects of state and individuals. And since I have three texts which work as my primary source for exploring this area, 1984, written by George Orwell, uh, a highly relevant text but a hugely misunderstood one, and a completely over explained one also at the same time. 1984, then I go to Brave New World by Aldous Huxley, and then a lesser known one but an equally brilliant one, and no less than in any form, be it the content or the quality of creative input into the writing of the text, Anthony Burgess's A Clockwork Orange. So all these three texts are basically talking about different types of dystopia, and I'm going to explore these types of dystopias from the legal point as well, and the literary point as well. Now, literature has been fascinated with this idea of dystopia, and law is already settled into a certain perception about it. But the distinction between both of them is literature also tends to over romanticize it, tends to over generalize it, but law being law has to work on certain principles. So I'm trying to frame a way or create a framework through which I can bring both of them together.
So, where do you see history and literature getting overlapped? Do you see any
The word
overlapping?
literature itself, in fact, I would take a cue from Mr. William Wordsworth. Emotions recollected in tranquility. I mean, everybody who undertakes this exercise of writing down something does so after the things happen, or tries to record that while it's in the process. So that corpus of information or facts, or let's say the description of the times, becomes a literature. And since the time already passes after a certain period, you are no longer in that period or in that epoch, it becomes historic. Everything is historic, everything has historicity, everything, in fact. That's why even the people of literature talk about the historicity, the psychiatry of the reader, the times and the tides that he has, or he has been through, or she has been through. Now you cannot divide Mr. William Wordsworth from the time that he was a part of. You cannot separate him from the topography that he visited, the places that he passed by. You cannot separate Mr. Orwell that from that period of World War, or the interwar years between the Great World War and the First World War, which actually became the second World War later. It was not. It was originally called the Great World War, the Great War as they used to call it, but because you had two of them, so they were rechristened as the first one and the second one. So you cannot separate people from them. When Kipling writes "if," he talks about the great scope of human beings, the great scope of human character, to transcend all the boundaries of self and to achieve something subliminal. But the same Rudyard Kipling talks about the great burden of the white races to civilize the not so white, or the black, brown, and the so called other blacks.
So, don't you think that he made that statement because of the compulsion that his father was a member of Indian Civil Services, and because he
See,
was born in India,
there was this idea of bringing a system into.
he knew that he was wrong when he made that statement.
But you cannot.
A philosopher cannot be a colonizer
Huh.
if he treats every human being equal.
But tell me, this whole exercise of post-colonialism is equally a literary one. So I do not attest to this idea of a philosopher not being a colonizer. In fact, this whole idea of the academic or the intellectual class telling people this is right for you and that is not right for you is equally an exercise in colonization.
Mhm.
I think so. It's equally an exercise in colonization. See, at most, I could give him the benefit of doubt of bringing a system into this chaos. But to say that there was no prior system existing in this piece of land, that there was chaos all around, is a huge misunderstanding of the greatness of this vast beauty that we call India. And with administration it happens. You tend to become the my bap of the people that you serve, because ultimately it's your pen and it's your stroke of the pen that gives somebody the affirmative right to speak for themselves, or brings hope into, or a qualitative change into somebody's life. So you tend to cross that Lakshman Rekha every time, because you are naturally in a position of giving something, because you hold that power and authority. But to link that to the idea of bringing civilization into this chaos is not a welcoming idea. So I see people living their intellectual lives in a fracture as well, because I cannot make peace with the fact that in Kipling, and Kipling is just an example by the way,
Mm-hmm.
in Kipling we have two sides of the same coin. A personality so fractured that he could even say that. But
But
he has done that.
but in the
The
poem,
the same man writes about Ganga Deen. The same man writes about if. So there are fractures, and to talk about them, you will have to ask very specific questions, because I cannot think of anything else.
so what is your idea of nationalism? Do you think nationalism in India is now under threat because of a fascist government?
No, there is no fascist government right now.
How do you say?
There may be fascist tendencies everywhere, and they are everywhere. I think uh, the government of Bengal, being a communist government by ideology, was the most fascist one.
So is
Now, to say that every idea of totalitarianism can only be connected to, or only be thrown into the courts of the right-wing people, is a very bad thing to say, and it's not an objective thinking.
so you are saying that left wing should not exist in the country.
No, everybody should exist in the country.
No space for left wing.
No, every space for everything.
Then why LGBT people are not been given the due credit which
See,
they were?
this happens because, see, every society goes through evolution. First, the legal recognition of their space will happen, which is a process in flux right now. It's already happening, and people will slowly recognize it. And with this recognition, with this internalization of idea that yes, alternative modalities can also exist, alternative masculinities, alternative sexuality, alternative genders, howsoever you may tag them or call them, may exist, and an existence which is not exactly the way you think they ought to be can also exist, will actually make this a very democratic exercise, and will help them out. Now, coming back to your question that whether nationalism, what's my nationalism, and is it under threat? There is no threat. India is a country of India is a country of patriot people. Before this nation, in its present form, came into existence, people were already patriotic. People had a sense of innate patriotism, but to say that the country rose up in arms, crying over this idea of our nationalist supremacy at the cost of somebody else, was never present, and it will never be there. In the same way that India has always been a country of regional superiorities. One part or the other of this country has always symbolized some form of revolution, or let's say some form of evolution in terms of idea, and the rest of the parts have played catch up. And in this way, we've seen that this whole idea has been cemented. And to substantiate that, let me tell you, sometimes what happens is, to bring that idea of nationalism specifically from the European construct actually hampers this Indian understanding as well. Because nationalism for me is always a personal feeling, but it's not at the cost of somebody becoming an alien to me or becoming an enemy to me. So it's not an exercise in abhorring or excluding out somebody. It's an exercise in inclusivity, specifically for the people who are within the limitations of our boundaries. So nationalism for me is a form of patriotism, because I do not know everything about my nation. So how do I theorize it? How do I put an ism into it? I don't know a lot about South. I don't know anything about the Northeast. I have not been to the West.
But the government doesn't want you to go to northeast
This
because
is
the inner line permit concept is all about not letting the
but
rest of the
but see,
country
I'll,
to
I'll tell
reach
you,
to
no,
that
no, that's
corner.
that's not the point. That's not the point. That's their protection. That's their way.
But I am not going to harm anybody if I'll go
No, no,
there.
you never know the economic interest. You never know the economic
I am
opportunity.
from Bihar. How could I have
Arey,
economic interest in?
a Bihari is famous for going to any extent to earn. He,
So what are you?
you send
What
a
are
manned
you?
mission, and a Bihari will go and sell chowmin on
No,
the moon
there
itself.
are a lot of Biharis or people of Bihar working in Northeast, but they haven't harmed anyone. So,
Arey,
what is the.
you never know how somebody might take harm out of yeah, how many.
So, don't you
See,
think.
you never know how somebody might intend or take out the meaning of harm out of your actions. You never know. You might not harm somebody. This is your idea of it, but the mere act of you going and establishing your, let's say, piecemeal business might be an obstruction of economic opportunity for the people who are living there.
But what about the people of
So, so,
Northeast
so
who
I'll tell
come
you, no,
to
no.
other places?
Let's not skip topics right now.
I am not skipping topics.
The
I am
point
just
is,
making a counter argument.
the government has created a system where they are protecting their minority rights, and which is completely okay. Now, the government has never stopped you from knowing them culturally. There has been a boundary, but it's for you to transcend. The books are available, the people are available.
Okay, tell me
You
one
go and
thing.
visit them, but if you do not do that, you're not in a position to sermonize.
So tell me one thing, how the economic development will take place if the rest of the country will not be connected to the northeast. If people would not be allowed to reach to that corner of the country, how do you expect economic
No,
prosperity to
it will
happen?
happen. It will happen, and it is happening.
Then on what
Inner
model it will
inner
happen?
inner line permit is a thing of past.
No, no, it is existing right now also.
Listen to me. It's a thing of the past. Since you could not push in money into that area because you were not sure about how to deal with that area, so you created a distinction, let's say a barrier. Now, at least I can. People say that what's the biggest achievement of this government? I can tell you that this government has been spending so much into that zone, and it has been pretty bullish in its agenda of looking towards the northeast side, specifically Lucist policy that they call. So to say that you cannot understand them is a gross understatement.
So why Bihar is not getting funds? Why Bihar has been kept aloof?
No, Bihar, see, Bihar has its own issues. Till 90s, the condition of infrastructure in every state was equally the same. Now, after 90s, the spending on the infrastructure decreased because Bihar became the symbol of anti central policies, though Bihar has always been known to be anti center in many ways, and Biharis do not shy away from that perception as well. Now, to be specific, after 1990, when the whole country started moving forward, we were still busy in the old regime, in the old world. We took refuge in the caste politics. We were not concerned about. See, the moment you say that BJP becomes uh, a flag bearer for the baniyas and for the people of the capitalist class, then there is then this question of funds becomes redundant, and this has happened. At one place you say that we don't have money, we are not being allocated proper funds for our expenditures. At the same time you say that they'll destroy our fabric, they'll destroy our culture. So this double think and this double speak won't work. You need money. See, investment is an exercise of capital, and capital only produces result when you allow the investments to come in. And you and me as individuals won't be spending much on infrastructure. It's the big capitalist people, through public private partnerships, through projects, will invest in the infrastructure, and those infrastructures will take us forward. So to say that Bihar is not getting funds is partially correct, because of the population that we have to feed. Besides, our representation is also less. A state of such a population and of such a population density needs more representatives in the parliament as well, in the upper house of the parliament as well. Because see, a state like Kerala, having a population of let's say 3 or 4 crore, has 20 or 26 how many parliamentarians? 20 I think. So a state having 4 times the population has only double
No,
the
Bihar has 40 MPs
Yes.
in Lok Sabha.
And Kerala?
That I don't know for sure right now,
It's
but I will have to
20.
check.
It's 20.
That is because of the population.
That is because of the population.
Yes, the seats are divided on the basis of population of the state. How many people are living right
Arey,
now?
तो we have 4 times the
But
population, na?
but the census of 1971 is being used to divide the constituencies.
So in a way we are lacking. We are lacking because we have less representation. Our representatives, in fact, our MLAs, to an extent, have a bit bigger constituencies than the MPs of
Our MLAs are mostly from business class and they do not understand the importance of education. So you will not find our MLAs is speaking about the development of educational institutions.
Yes.
Have you seen ever Nitish Kumar speaking about ever the overhauling of education in Bihar?
No, Nitish Kumar's approach has always been one of a.
He always believe in LI
No, I'll tell you.
system of politics.
His approach was always more similar to that idea of piecemeal reform, where we'll take everything once at.
But he is not aggressive.
No, he is not aggressive, and without aggressive agenda pushing, you cannot reform the system.
If a person who is
He
representing,
has been good in implementing policies, giving out freebies, handing out bicycles, which have worked. But the
but the gross
whole idea of
enrollment ratio in Bihar is still so low that Bihar tops from the down. Bihar came at
What is
20
down? What is
in
down? Bottom.
in the Niti Aayog index, which was
See.
conducted. Bihar was at 29th position in the list of all the states.
I know that.
If you have the budget of 40,000 crore rupees, still you don't see any change in the position.
This is an issue related to the implementation of your policies, and he has.
Then who is responsible?
He has long been sitting on a state which needs to move more rapidly, and Nitish Kumar has outlived his times. He is no longer fit for these times. But
Then who
sadly,
do
the
you think
politics.
is the replacement?
Now that's a political question that I won't like to go into.
So, okay, let's come back to academics and let me ask you a question related to you. So, which institution you want to join for your postdoc? Is it Princeton, Oxford, or University of Waterloo in Canada, or any other university of your choice? Which one do you want to join?
We'll see. Let me not open my mouth beforehand and spoil my chances. We'll see. Let the time come.
Okay, so you are wearing the shirt of Batman. Are you going to watch Oppenheimer?
Yes.
So, do you think Christopher Nolan is a dystopian director? He always
Why
directs
do you use dystopian?
because I have never seen anything like Gotham City, where you have an administrative body and there is a parallel person working to reform everything.
Nay, this whole idea of a vigilante working to clear the scum of the city is an idea of comic books and is an idea of fiction.
So, is it
People,
not
people,
dystopia?
people do that. People do that, and there have been cases where such endeavors have been undertaken, but they won't be successful because everything that happens to the system happens through the system. So you cannot reform a system by bringing or unleashing a force external to it. You cannot bring a chaotic element which has not been a part of the system and then think of reforming the system. Even the history gives us the precedent of the same nature. No revolution has been successful. Even the Russians failed to do so. The French Revolution resulted in Napoleon coming to power. Now see, a man who's authoritative in his decisions will ultimately end up uh, taking good decisions and a lot of bad decisions as well. So that's not the case. The point is, in a democratic setup, you need to take the consent, you need to take people forward. Nobody moves in isolation, everybody has to move forward. But that has not, sadly, that has not been the case of this country, or I think of Europe as well. The present Ukrainian Russian situation is an example, and our current external minister has pointed out very candidly at many
Conferences?
platforms and conferences uh, that Europe needs to wake up from its slumber. That the issues of Europe are world's problems, but the world's problems are not Europe's problem. No, so you can readily understand by this statement that how limited people are, how greedy they are, how self-serving they are, that everything that pains them, discomforts them, ultimately becomes the issue of the whole world, only because they have this capital to back their claims to spend, so that they could create a discourse around it, to set a narrative around it. But when it becomes the issue of the other side, it no longer remains a valid point. And this has been the case of America. The biggest perpetrator of human rights speaks about democracy.
So, you are saying they are
And here
violators
in
of
this
human
case,
rights.
the same beacon of this hope has been the ringmaster of this Ukrainian crisis. You push other countries up to the border of a country which has always been in isolation, which has somehow sustained and managed to exist, and then you say that Russia is an aggressor because every country is free, but everywhere when some ammunition is discovered, it's either of the French origin or either of the American origin. So what's the politics behind it? The same spokesperson of global democracy, America. And I can tell you, strip away all these post Keynesian institutions and then see how America changes.
So you don't.
Everything that happened after Bretton Woods, let's put it aside for a moment and then talk about America, and then we'll see how they react.
So you are saying America does not really care about democracy, it only cares about its own interests.
It has always done so. Tell me.
So don't you think is doing something
See, USSR.
right in order to oppose USA?
See, USSR is well within their rightful uh, authority, if I may use that word. They are well within their space to protect their own space. Now, to enter into a space is a question that requires better understanding of this situation, but their reasons are right. Here, Russia was not. Ukraine was not the aggressor. It was Russia which actually declared war.
But why?
But they have a legitimate cause, na? The cause is that they have
What they did is not right.
a fair amount of doubt that all this golbandi, all this gutbazi is taking place because India, because Russia, because America wants Russia to be cornered, because America has to fight a war on the Chinese front, and now they are looking to neutralize the allies that might rise from the slumber once they go full throttle. But see, this is not going to happen.
So
And see, Russia is correct right now, but Russia was not correct when they declared those two parts of
Germany,
what
Berlin.
what were those two parts which they declared independent after
But Russia,
annexing them in 2014?
don't ask.
Uh,
So, but Russia says that a plebiscite was conducted there, and people voted in favor of being independent. They wanted to be independent.
nahi,
That's why they did that, because they were not happy with the Ukrainian government, and they were keep sidelined.
see, I'll tell you.
They were sidelined.
This is purely an exercise in political safeguarding.
Russia only gave a tag to them
You
that they are
you cannot-
independent.
You are not the authority to do so. But if we say that,
But the same thing Subhash Chandra Bose was trying to do for India back
exactly
then.
the same thing happened with Bangladesh, East Pakistan. Who are we to interfere? If we talk about our
We were
inherent
also-
right to interfere, if we talk about the right of interference in somebody else's issues, then we were also in the wrong.
But we were protecting the democracy. We were protecting the
Everybody is
civil
protect-
rights of the people.
Everybody was protecting democracy. Nobody has
And
never protected.
do you
anything else.
do you know this fact that Jinnah had visited to East Pakistan, and he had said to the people of East Pakistan that it is necessary for all of you to learn Urdu. Now, having known that fact that people there were not Urdu speaking, but they were speaking Bengali. They were Bengali speaking people. So, don't you think that
Don't you-
culture was being
see,
opposed?
Don't you think that people from the current Pakistan, the current geography of Pakistan, and the administration of Pakistan, aware that once time passes, we are ultimately going to lose that part of the Pakistan, because in a world so diverse and in a world so highly fragile, politically unstable, a country separated by a vast landmass such as India cannot exist at two corners of.
So, is it not true India also conspired against Pakistan?
Why not? We should. They conspire against us, we conspire against them. It's a democratic exercise. And I call it democratic
And
because
is it
see,
legitimate?
If I do not do that,
Is it
if I do not
legitimate?
do that, see, this agenda pushing happens everywhere. What you are is how you look at the world. So everybody does that. If I do not do that, I am going to perish, because nobody is going to exist in a vacuum or in a flux.
So, can I say that was unnecessary exercise to protect India
See,
from
you.
outside because Pakistan was a threat, and
It
India
was.
wanted to make its border more safer for the people who were near
Huh.
to the border.
Yes, on the same principles I agree with
But
you.
what
I
about Bangladesh?
on the same principle I
Is
agree that
Bangladesh not hostile right now for India?
Bangladesh is a pile of shit because it may be good in economics, it has been good in its development indicators, but if they think
But they
that
have
they
made.
ever stand a chance of fighting against India, then let them test their
No, no,
muscles.
they will never fight. But don't you think?
I do not care about the hostility of a country like Kosovo because they don't matter to
But
me if they
Bangladesh,
behave in that way.
but Bangladesh is
I
getting.
am all for people who are good to me. I am all for a very peaceful neighbor, given the fact that I'll be good to them. And if I do something wrong on purpose, they have their own democratic right to say anything against me, to voice their apprehensions, to show their protest. But if they are hostile for some reason that is not exactly how I subscribe to their perception, then they don't matter to me. It's as simple as that.
Then what about India's neighborhood first policy?
See, you cannot do away with your swabhiman.
India is the big brother of South
No,
Asia.
this idea we are no longer the big brother. We'll be a big brother. We'll take care of everybody.
Then tell me
Only
if
see, do not stop me in the middle of.
no, that it is a necessary question to ask because
This idea of big brother is a negative idea, if I may say so.
India is the biggest country in South Asia. Then
So just
India
because
needs
I'm
to show
just be- nahin,
solidarity with these smaller countries.
at the
How will they?
at the cost of entertaining your gibberish.
But don't you think that is the fault of our politicians
No,
that they
that is
did not
no.
understand
There are
this silly
factors
thing?
there are factors that are beyond politics. A Muslim population so vast as that will never um, welcome an Indian Hindu population with open arms.
That is because of the religion.
Exactly.
Let's
So
not.
kindly, nahi, so kindly do away with the religion part, na. Government's state is above all these things, but a population is not. Okay, so a population defines the state, the government that becomes the state actually. So the policies will actually reflect the common population. So kindly do away with the religion of their country, and we'll do away with our religion, and then we'll meet in some we'll meet in Rumi's hypothetical land, नदी के उस पार जहाँ कुछ नहीं exist करता है वहाँ हम दोनों मिलेंगे, ठीक है?
So could we believe a situation in future where there could be a situation like invasion of Bangladesh
No,
and
that-
Pakistan
no, that is-
at
that
both
is-
the front at the same time?
I think
Because Bangladesh has increased its proximity with China, and China is a direct threat in terms of politics as well as in terms of economics.
we'll take care of all these things at our own pace.
Then what about the border dispute that we have?
We'll take care of it.
Why haven't we been able to solve that
Now there
in
has been
7
issues.
decades?
There has been an issue. Previous governments were
Incompetent.
no softies. Now they were
Now you are
exactly
using
doing-
a very, very.
sly word. I'm trying to use that deliberately here.
You don't want to criticize the government.
Huh?
You don't want to criticize the government.
No. This is
What
is
about
this is
what
worst
about the
form of
soldiers who
criticism.
lost life?
That is why I say that. That is why because no politician
Who would care
lost
about
their
them?
son. No politician lost their son, and if somebody says that a family lost two of its members, they were they were in the wrong. That's why they had to do. It became so. Now you meddled into Sri Lanka, you paid the price. You meddled in the Sikh affairs, you paid the price. But you allowed that situation to brew. It was your fault. You created a monster and you paid for it. Now Sri Lanka is a relatively neutral country, and you cannot deal with Sri Lanka in the same way you deal with Pakistan, because Pakistan is a militarized country and Sri Lanka is not.
Then what about the current economic crisis that
No,
Sri Lanka is facing?
no, see,
Has
when I
Indian
talk
government
about
not?
something, you skip the branch and
No,
you go somewhere
because
else.
you says,
No, that's a non-issue for me. You don't understand that. I can
but
kill
India
Sri
has
Lanka
given $500 million to
because
Sri Lanka, and what
because
about the people of
they are closer to
now?
our
In the
interest, na.
because you said in the previous statement that $500 million is a very big amount, no doubt. Then why not to invest that money in state like Bihar where education is so pure, people are thriving for jobs, people like me who has no
See,
work.
everything happens at the same time. I cannot invest in a state while losing my borders, knowing fully that a country like China is already plotting against us in Sri Lanka. So I have to take care of everything.
Then
All the
what is
thing.
our maritime
See,
policy?
I don't know about our maritime policy, but I know for sure that China, we are trying to strangle China through Hambantota, and we'll do so. And we are equally trying to stifle Pakistan the same way. Hambantota port ही है ना.
Yeah.
So a Sri Lankan Prime Minister lost my confidence the moment he entered into such a foolish agreement, knowing fully that he is not going to return such an amount of money.
He said he needed money.
हाँ तो he needed it ना, and that money was so well used that ultimately it ended up bankrupting that country itself. So that's how you design policies.
When
Welcome.
now tell, is it not a mistake from the side of Indian government when they know that politicians in that country are not serious about the affairs of that country?
What kind of a shitty question is that?
Why to invest so much money in that country where
नहीं,
politicians
I
do
mean,
not care about their people?
A student like you who's studying for UPSC asks such a dumb question.
I am just asking, couldn't the money be invested somewhere else?
नहीं, why? In the same way, people are saying that why is Ram Mandir being built? You should build a hospital.
But that is an internal issue.
नहीं, there is no issue. No issue is.
The government is not direct party to it.
नहीं, why? Do you think the government is not a direct party to it?
I said not direct. Indirectly, the government may be
Our
involved.
government using Ram Mandir as an issue, winning their elections, is not a party to it. I mean, how could you be so simple?
I have
in your
seen the
argument?
papers.
See, if you make such simple distinctions, then this conversation will not reach far.
Or maybe you want me to go back to the academics.
No,
Do you
no.
want me to do that? I will do
You
that
can talk
happily.
you can talk
Because
about anything under the sun.
because I am
But
happy
do
that
not-
you gave me your time to ask such questions, because I have
क्या
a lo-
वो what क्या?
to ask such questions.
See, the point.
You are not allowed to make fun of me. I am the one who is here to ask question.
See, let me cross that line.
But you cannot breach
In
my
the word-
privacy.
In the words of great Karan Thapar.
Karan
let me
Thapar-
do it once more. I am allowed to do so if you ask dumb question, and I say that.
Okay, tell me, is Kabir a central figure in Hindi literature? And
Kabir-
I will ask one more question, a followed up
Kabir
question.
became a central figure of Hindi literature after this whole idea of creating a nationalistic canon started.
But for
taking
whom he
shape.
was creating that?
His literature was a literature of the masses, and that was not the standard literature that was being produced those times. But his literature became popular, and due to its popularity, it had to be included. Kabir, and it had a literary quality, it had a mystical quality to it. In the same way, Tulsi had to face the backlash of
Mughals.
the Mughals and the people.
But Akbar was a secular ruler.
Arey, you idiot, listen to me. Akbar, I don't think there is any instance telling a meeting between Tulsidas and Akbar.
But he was not banned at that time. What I read in history.
I think Tulsidas was not somebody who Akbar knew.
But he was very famous among the masses. Because of the
in the times he lived.
yes,
Achha.
because he created this new scripture called Ramcharitmanas.
You say that a scripture written by Tulsidas
In the local language.
in the local language suddenly becomes popular while he is writing it, and there is no dispensation or distribution, and that he was so fast with his distribution that he produced a lakh copies of it and
Surely he was
distributed.
not an MBA graduate from one of the best IIMs of India.
See, this happens with the passage of time. I think he the best I can assure you is he must have become popular after his literature reached the masses, and that must have taken time. It didn't happen simultaneously.
So tell
it
me-
cannot happen simultaneously.
So tell me what kind of
I mean, let me tell you. Either I became an overnight sensation. So that happened. That might happen only because today we have social media platforms. So tell me, what was the social media platform in the times of Kabir and Tulsi?
because people
I'll tell
used
you,
to come together
because you
to
have
chant the name
you
of
have
God.
to create canons. Bhakti Kal is a Kal. So when you create a Kal, a period, an epoch, you have to find people who were the major proponents working in that